Asserting central space immediately unlocks avenues for rapid piece development. Immediately challenging white's central pawn with the Nimzowitsch defense opens up dynamic counterplay. Gaining space, white pushes the knight to a less active square, aiming to control the center and develop an initiative. The knight boldly ventures forward, challenging white's central pawn and seeking active squares. Asserting central dominion, d4 immediately contests the nd5 foray and opens lines for the c1 bishop. Challenging the center pawn directly opens up lines and forces white to consider pawn structure and piece activity. Reinforcing the pawn's advance, this knight now prepares to exert pressure on black's queenside. Capturing on e5 immediately releases pawn tension, opening the d-file for potential early piece activity. Reclaiming the pawn opens lines and creates immediate central pressure for white. Reclaiming central space while preparing to develop more pieces is the immediate goal of this knight repositioning. Sacrificing the knight on f7 initiates a sharp, forcing sequence, aiming to disrupt black's kingside development and open lines towards the vulnerable monarch. The immediate material deficit is less important than the potential to seize the initiative and exploit black's exposed king. Observe how this pawn sacrifice fundamentally alters the strategic landscape, creating immediate tactical opportunities and forcing black into a reactive posture. Reclaiming material at the cost of king's safety is a perilous gambit. Your monarch is now exposed on an open file, a glaring target for white's centralized pieces. Unleashing a fierce queenside assault, this audacious check immediately exploits the king's exposed position, creating immense tactical chaos and forcing a significant reshuffle of black's defenses as their monarch becomes a sitting duck. Escorting the king into the central crossfire, a desperate attempt to escape the immediate check while paradoxically exposing it further to enemy cavalry, sacrificing a vital tempo and potentially inviting a swift, decisive mating attack if white's queen and knights can coordinate effectively. A bold gamble that sacrifices positional integrity for a sliver of breathing room, akin to a cornered animal lashing out. A suffocating pressure mounts as the queen, supported by the knight, forces the already displaced black monarch into yet another perilous square, exposing weaknesses deep within enemy territory. The king's flight continues, seeking refuge from the relentless queen's assault and the open file that suddenly feels so exposed. This deliberate relocation, though seemingly passive, aims to consolidate defenses and perhaps lure the white queen into a less advantageous square, hoping to find a moment's respite from the immediate tactical storm. A bold reiteration of the queen's threat, exploiting the exposed monarch once more and preventing any comfortable regrouping for black's pieces, forcing a continual, uncomfortable dance around the center. Repetition is a desperate plea for breathing room, but this forced march towards the queenside, again, only exposes your monarch further to relentless cavalry probes and creates an increasingly precarious pawn structure that will surely crumble under sustained pressure. Repetition is a desperate tactic, aiming to force a draw by agreement or hope for a blunder, but it leaves white's pieces somewhat uncoordinated and black's king, despite its exposed position, is showing remarkable resilience. This constant checking might feel active, but it's not developing white's army effectively for a decisive assault, and the repeated checks are simply returning black's monarch to the same squares without achieving any lasting positional advantage for white. Relocating the monarch to d6 sacrifices valuable tempo for immediate safety, aiming to escape the relentless queen checks and potentially regroup the beleaguered army. Opening up the queen's diagonal, this pawn push initiates a critical battle for central space, aiming to dislodge black's knight and potentially expose the weakened kingside, while simultaneously threatening to restrict the opponent's pieces. Shifting the knight from its central outpost to the c6 square offers a subtle but important defensive consolidation, reinforcing the d5 pawn and preparing to recapture any material lost on the queenside. Forcing the black king to shuffle yet again opens up the queen's diagonal assault, aiming to exploit the king's exposed central placement. The black king, having been unceremoniously ejected from its cozy fortress, now finds itself on a perilous central square, a prime target for white's coordinated assault. This particular placement on e6, while seemingly a retreat, offers no immediate respite and continues to expose it to a cascade of checks, forcing further, likely undignified, scurrying. Seizing the open central file decisively, white injects immediate pressure by capturing that pawn. This exchange opens up lines toward black's exposed monarch, creating significant tactical possibilities and forcing black into a difficult defensive posture with their king still awkwardly placed. The consequences of this central pawn grab extend far beyond just material. It dictates the immediate strategic direction of the game, potentially leading to a swift attack. With this capture, black embraces a highly compromised position, accepting a weakened pawn structure and exposing their monarch to continued aggressive pressure. Embarking on a sortie with the knight, white seeks to disrupt black's nascent queen activity and exploit the king's exposed central position, aiming to create further queenside pressure while simultaneously probing for tactical weaknesses. Black recaptures the pawn, but in doing so, exposes the queenside to potential threats and creates a slight awkwardness for the d-pawn. The king's journey has been quite an adventure, and while it's currently shielded, its central presence might become a target if white can develop attacking pieces quickly. The pawn chain on the queenside now presents a rather passive barrier, and the knights are in an interesting dance, each vying for key central squares. Unlocking a latent diagonal, the bishop aims to pressurize the isolated queen and disrupt black's central harmony. The queen retreats, seeking safety and repositioning to potentially harass the opponent's central pawns, but it leaves the pawn on d6 exposed and overlooks the growing control white has established on the kingside with the knight and bishop poised for action. Initiating a pawn push to gain tempo and restrict the queen's scope. The pawn storm is coming. This advance aims to nudge the enemy queen, forcing it to retreat once more and potentially setting up a later b4 push to cramp black's queenside space. White is actively seeking to disrupt black's current position and gain a firmer grip on the center. Seizing that unprotected pawn immediately presents a tantalizing, yet ultimately perilous, opportunity. It distracts from the precariousness of your monarch, which remains exposed in the center, a prime target for white's developing pieces and encroaching pawns. The monarch's escape route is being brutally curtailed as white establishes a potent diagonal threat, forcing a difficult decision upon black's beleaguered king. This aggressive pin across the board immediately highlights the precariousness of the black position, threatening to unravel any semblance of central control, and potentially leading to a cascade of tactical complications. Committing the monarch to such an exposed square abandons all semblance of safety, inviting relentless tactical pressure from white's coordinated pieces and leaving the black king vulnerable to a cascade of checks. Unleashing a powerful rook onto the open d-file, white capitalizes on black's scattered pieces and exposed monarch, aiming to pry open further lines for an immediate assault. Relocating the king to the center opens up fascinating, albeit risky, possibilities, forcing white to reconsider their attack's focus and potentially creating a tense tactical standoff. The knight's sudden lunge to b5 ignites a fierce struggle for board control, aiming to disrupt black's fragile pawn structure and threaten a decisive blow on c7.